Good morning and welcome to another edition of Political Brew. I'm your host, Donovan Lynch. I'm joined by Democratic analyst Genius Black, Republican analyst Ray Richardson. Guys, thank you so much for being here. There's almost too much news to talk about to fit into one Political Brew, but I want to start at the beginning, which is Trump's inauguration. Now, he was inaugurated on Monday, returning for his second term. Trump, in his inauguration speech, declared the nation was entering a golden age, saying, quote, "From this moment on, America's decline is over." He also outlined his specific policy proposals, which included retaking the Panama Canal, which the U.S. ceded to Panama in a process that concluded in 1999. Trump also spoke of the U.S. as a growing nation that, quote, expands our territory. Ray, I want to begin with you. You know, the Biden presidency was all about the international rules-based order. What do you think is going to change about America's role in the world under a second Trump presidency?
So I think we will not become isolationists, as some have suggested. I think what Donald Trump wants to do is that everything we do, the American people and our nation, is put first in any treaty, any agreement, anything. The Panama Canal is a good example. We have something known as the Monroe Doctrine. It's been in place for almost 200 years. Our fifth president put it there. Jack Kennedy used it in October of '62 to expel the Soviets from Cuba. We now have the Chinese in a disguise, a multi-layered corporation running the Panama Canal. We didn't build it with all of our treasure and loss of life to have the Chinese come into our hemisphere and run one of the most important passages in the world. So I think Donald Trump's absolutely right. I don't know why the Panamanian government did this. If they needed somebody to run it because they couldn't, it should have been us. And we gave it back in '79. And I was a kid. I was a senior in high school. And I didn't understand it then. And I certainly don't understand it now.
Now, Genius, the Monroe Doctrine was all about excluding influence from the Western Hemisphere. Some of these themes are centuries old and feel like from another time. What did you make of this expansionist rhetoric from Trump?
You know, I don't respect it. I understand. I appreciate that you do. I don't think that we have say-so over that canal. I think when you look at the history of our relationship with Panama, it's somewhat fraught, and it's not just what we say goes. And I think that people in the world are ready to see Donald Trump act up a little bit. I think he'll do it in the name of expanding America, but I don't think that every American is behind that. I don't think every American respects that, particularly in the style in which it's happening. I don't appreciate the language, and I think he's doing it all right at the beginning to create a certain energy. I don't love it, but I'm going to keep watching. But you know, the world is not our playground.
And I think that's a fair assessment, Genius. I don't think it should be, but where we need strategic assets. Greenland's a good example. You know, if you think back to the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, they wanted to impeach Jefferson over that. They said he didn't have the authority. Can you imagine our nation now where we did not have a coast-to-coast country? That was a genius thing he did with the Louisiana Purchase. And then in 1867, Secretary of State William Seward purchased Alaska, I think for around $7 million. They called it Seward's Folly. They thought he was crazy. I don't think anybody in 2025 thinks that was a bad deal for the country.
I want to move on to one of Trump's other actions in his opening hours in office. He moved to pardon roughly 1,500 people charged in connection with the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Trump had outlined these plans before returning to office, but many were surprised by his decision to extend clemency to those convicted of violent crimes at the Capitol. This is what Maine Senator Susan Collins, a Republican, said of the move when I spoke to her.
To pardon those who were committed of violent crimes and who've gone through the jury system which found them guilty, to me is just plain wrong. And I was surprised and appalled that the president went to that extent.
Genius, I'll begin with you. What do you think this decision to pardon those convicted of violent crimes does to influence Donald Trump's ability to be that kind of law and order president?
I think that Donald Trump operates on a system of loyalty. I think that's very important to him, potentially even more so than the law, I'm gonna be honest. And I think that what it does is there are gonna be some people who really back him up and feel like he stuck to his word, because he did. He actually did. I mean, I'm not going to front about that. And they're going to feel like he was looking out for some Americans who felt so beat up, let's say, by the Biden administration that they didn't know what else to do. Now, I don't think that's true, but I know that there will be people who side with that. So for some people, they're going to feel like, after all that time, right, the right thing is happening. People are being set free. I do think for other people, the rule of law, it's eroding before your eyes when you watch that. Now, there's other things and pardons and things happening as well, but I really think that some people will see it and realize that in Trump's America, loyalty to him means more than following the law.
I want to change this question a little bit for you, Ray, because Collins called this last week a terrible week for our justice system, not only on Trump's pardon, but on Biden's last-minute decision to preemptively pardon members of his own family.
Right.
What do you think America's level of faith in the justice system, in this concept of rule of law, is right now?
Well, I think that's been widely eroded, not by the actions of the pardons, although I think what Joe Biden did was part and parcel for his administration. But let's not forget, pardons are given to almost always, not always, because Richard Nixon was never convicted of a crime, but to people who have committed crimes. And then they are forgiven for their sins and given a chance at a new life here. What happened on January 6th was a riot. It was a disgrace to the country. I agree with all of that. But I think giving clemency to some of these people who have rotted in jail for 4 years for offenses, had they not happened at the Capitol, they might have done 2 or 3 months for. Some of the people in Maine that were convicted and in jail, they were literally in jail when they got their pardon. So it's not as though they didn't do time and didn't suffer some punishment. This does give them a new lease on life. Respectfully, Genius, I don't agree about the loyalty piece. I think Donald Trump saw January 6 convictions, and we saw this with Joe Biden pardoning the entire J6 committee. I think he thought the whole thing was an injustice with the way it was handled. Some people were convicted of crimes who didn't even go into the Capitol. So could he have looked at it more judiciously and gone one by one? Maybe. But I think he wants to put it behind us and let's move forward.
And Senator Collins was really in the news for this because she came out against Trump, and that was not the only time that she came out against Trump. Now, I want to also talk a little bit about Trump's pick for defense secretary. On Thursday, Collins and fellow Republican Lisa Murkowski voted with Democrats against moving the nomination for Pete Hegseth forward. Hegseth has been accused of sexually assaulting a woman in 2017 and of drinking to the point of passing out on several occasions. He has vigorously denied both of these claims. Collins, in her explanation for deciding not to support Hegseth's nomination, cited his lack of leadership experience and views on women in combat. We have one of the most powerful lawmakers in Washington as a senator from Maine in Susan Collins. Do you think in this next Trump term, she will be more of a foil to the second Trump administration, or do you think she'll be more in line and in lockstep as the administration moves forward, Genius?
I would say on this issue, I'm with Susan Collins on this one. I do think we'll find that as a Republican senator who represents a diversely minded state, and that's okay, I'm with that, you will see her moving what was considered lock and step at times. I do think that will happen. We have seen it happen. Well, we've also seen her, what I call standing alone. She is not afraid to say when she does not support something Donald Trump is doing or the administration. And that is one of the reasons I respect her. She is so bipartisan. So at times, I believe she will be the foil. She'll be one of the few people who is courageous enough to just say, no, I'm not supporting that. So yes.
Ray, what role do you think Senator Collins will play?
I think she'll play the same role she played last time. Look, a lot of Republicans don't want to acknowledge this. Susan Collins stood with Donald Trump 82% of the time. There were times, like the Pete Hegseth nomination, where she said no. She had specific reasons for it. You know, the Constitution's very inconvenient for a lot of people who love it. It says advice and consent. That's what the role of the Senate is in these nominations. And I'm not going to criticize her for voting against Hegseth. She was concerned about his financial management abilities. Now, I don't agree with her on it. People came out who were with the organizations who said none of this happened, but there's always a lot of allegations. But I'm not going to criticize her for doing what she thought was right because she's elected United States Senator. She is not an elected Trump sycophant.
So I want to move to an issue that bridges kind of local and national. After taking office, Trump issued an executive order to deny citizenship to the American-born children of undocumented immigrants. Soon after, Maine Attorney General Aaron Frey joined an effort from 22 states to challenge the president's move as unconstitutional, saying it's directly in violation of the 14th Amendment. Frey added on Tuesday, quote, "It's not his job to reinterpret the Constitution. It's his job to follow the Constitution," speaking of President Trump. On Thursday, a federal judge in Seattle did temporarily block the president's order. So I just want to get your thoughts on Trump's move to kind of go for this order on birthright citizenship. What do you think about this?
So I've talked a lot about this on my show, and I have for a long time, not just because he did this. When the 14th Amendment was established, originalism is not only about the words written on the paper, but how they were understood by the people at the time they were written. When the 14th Amendment was written, it was clearly written to ensure that recently freed slaves would be citizens. They would be their children. There was a court case in the 1890s. It was the Wong Kim case, I believe. And there had been the Chinese Exclusion Act, and Wong Kim wanted to be a citizen. And the court held at that time that migrants who were born here, their children were born here, could be citizens. But I went back, and I did this a number of years ago, and looked at a lot of the ancillary thoughts around it, a lot of the ancillary writings, when the 14th Amendment was constructed and when the Wong case happened. And that was all in anticipation of people who were legally on our soil. I personally have mixed emotions or mixed feelings about whatever the outcome here is, but I don't think we should be afraid to have this conversation. When the 14th Amendment was established, and in the case in 1890, the people then who were making those decisions never anticipated 25 to 40 million people on our soil illegally. They always anticipated this would be about legal immigration.
Genius, what are your thoughts?
I don't limit those people's anticipations. I believe that in our founding fathers, through many politicians in America, we have witnessed brilliance many times. And so I don't know, I would agree they maybe didn't think of those exact numbers in the future, it would be this many people.
Right.
But I do believe that some of these ideas are powerful enough to live on even as America kind of shifts around it. I think that's part of the brilliance of the amendments, the Bill of Rights. Like, why do we have those things, right? I say that the 14th Amendment still stands. I think that Donald Trump, and this is my opinion, I think he is still playing on people's heartstrings to make them afraid of immigrants and to feel lost and to think, oh, you're taking care of them instead of me. So I don't know that it's valuable for America. I don't think that will make us great, but I do think he's playing it because it'll make people feel something.
Yeah, Ray, please.
I was just going to say, respectfully, I don't think he's trying to make people fear, but we do have a problem here. Joe Biden's administration allowed 12 million people that we know of to come in the country illegally. According to Border Patrol, there may be more that they saw through surveillance but didn't engage. We have a problem. We need to deal with it. We have people here that we have no idea who they are. I don't think we should fear the conversation. I hope this gets to the United States Supreme Court and let the 9 people that we've chosen to hash these things out decide whether that included people who had come here illegally. I don't think it's a conversation we should get mad about. I think we should have an intellectual debate about it, and then whatever they decide, go forward with it.
This lawsuit from Maine joined this lawsuit literally hours into Trump taking office. What does this tell us about how the state of Maine will be involved with the Trump administration in legal battles going forward, Genius?
Maine is a powerful state. We don't just take it. When we agree, we say it. When we don't agree, we say it. Now, I'm originally from Texas, so this is something I'm learning about the ruggedness of people in Maine that I respect and appreciate. So, again, you won't see me hawking down Susan Collins when she agrees with Trump about something. But also, when the AG in Maine says, we're not going for that, we're going to fight this, I think we're going to see more of that. And I think that Donald Trump, because of this flurry of what he's doing at the beginning, he's going to see a lot of legal difficulties. I want the viewers to recognize that signing executive orders doesn't just create new law. That's not exactly what that is. So don't feel too tired and defeated by this flurry of executive orders.
Yeah, that's a great point. Executive orders can create new law during the administration of the president, but what they can't do is change the Constitution. And currently, we have birthright citizenship. I do think this is a good fight. If Maine wants to join that struggle, I have no problem with it. I think we ought to have this conversation. Lately, America has been afraid to talk about important issues. We just get angry. We want to march in the streets. But we have a process here. And Judicial review was established by Marshall in Marbury versus Madison in, 1804, I believe. And it's an important element here. And so we should go through this process. We've got to quit being afraid of having difficult conversations.
Agreed.
Well, let's talk about another difficult conversation at the state level, which is the budget. On Tuesday, Governor Mills will deliver her State of the Budget address. This comes weeks after she unveiled her $11.6 billion two-year spending plan. Republicans have criticized its proposed tax hikes on things like tobacco products and video streaming services. Some progressive Democrats have criticized the budget's planned cuts to certain DHHS programs. The governor's office says in her speech, Mills will discuss the difficult choices behind her proposal. I want to start with the Republican. Republicans have been very upset about these proposed tax increases. If you're Governor Mills, what can you say to appease those worries by Republicans about these proposed taxes in the budget?
Well, there's an old saying, once you cross a line, it's easier to cross it again and again and again. Janet Mills promised the people of Maine she would not raise taxes in 2 elections. She raised the transfer tax, she raised the packaging tax. We all know about the Paid Family and Medical Leave Acts, the greatest dollar amount tax in all of Maine history. Now she wants to tax prescriptions at 70 cents per prescription. I was told by a pharmacist we do 150 million prescriptions in the state of Maine annually. Think about that for a moment. 6% of ambulance annual revenues. This is insane.
Those are private ambulance services, we should say.
This is insanity. Governor Mills, I don't know what's happened to her. Angus King is the greatest grower of the budget percentage-wise. In 1995, he went from $3.4 billion to $5.2 billion 8 years later when he left. When she took office, it was $7.5 billion. By the time she signs a supplemental next January, it's going to be $12 billion. And I would say you've seen education fall in this state from 32 to 43rd nationally. Our high schools are ranked dead last in the country. CNBC says our infrastructure is 49th in the country. Our business climate is 47th. And because of the new taxes, we are the ones that are actually law, we are now second highest tax burden in the country. Tax burden is different than high taxes because tax burden is based on ability to pay. This is insanity, and we're not better off for it. That's my argument.
Genius, slightly different question. Democrats have come out in support of parts of Governor Mills' budget, like the commitment to continuing to fund 55% of K-12 education costs. What does Governor Mills need to say, though, to appease the worry of Democrats? Because there has been some perceived fracture between Governor Mills and legislative Democrats. What does she need to say?
And we've been seeing this kind of bubbling up. What does she need to say? I think she needs to be transparent. I think she needs to share how she made these decisions. So I very much often appreciate what Janet Mills says. She's a very logical thinker. I appreciate that. I think she needs to crack that open a bit for people. I'm looking forward to see her address. I haven't seen everything in the budget, so I don't have a whole bunch of specifics like you do. Thank you, brother. But for me, I just see that I really think what I think she's gonna do is try to convince these lawmakers that they need to concede to each other. She can't always be the pivot point. Some of these fights need to resolve themselves. I guess that's where I land.
Really quickly, I want to go to another issue at the Capitol this week. On Thursday, advocates for a red flag law in Maine submitted more than 80,000 signatures to get their measure on the ballot. If enacted, the law would allow an at-risk person's family members to petition a judge directly to remove that person's guns if they pose a threat to themselves or others. Under Maine's current yellow flag law, starting the process is in the hands of law enforcement. Let's just talk, where is Maine's appetite for a red flag law as 21 other states in America have on the books? I'll start with you, Ray.
I don't think Maine has an appetite for it. We have the yellow flag law. It could have been used in the Robert Card case. We didn't use it effectively. But at the end of the day, I feel this way. I feel like the advocates are using the crisis of Lewiston in 2023 to push political agendas here. There's no evidence whatsoever a red flag law or the yellow flag law would have stopped Robert Card any more than the 72-hour waiting period. We know for a fact that wouldn't have impacted it, but they keep passing these. I feel they're treading on the graves of these innocent victims. I find it disgusting, and they're trying to use the tragedy to advance a political issue that there's no evidence that it would have impacted that situation or any other in Maine.
Genius, I'll leave you with the last word.
I believe that politics is part of the system that we apply to resolve issues. So respectfully, I don't think they're using a political issue. I believe that it is a political issue. The decisions around mental health, which I love that it's part of the conversation now, as well as gun control and red and yellow flag laws, it's finally we're advancing and we can actually talk about these things at the same time. I think that we have to keep trying things and we want to save more lives. I know the Republicans and Democrats don't always agree on how to do it, but I know that they agree that we should save more lives. I'll leave it at that.
You made a great point. What we need to be focusing on in the state of Maine, we have a dearth of mental health resources available. We have spent all this money at the state level and we have not increased that. That is the struggle we have in the state of Maine. I hear it every day from my audience. People are struggling with mental health issues and have no place to go.
That's real.
All right, very briefly before we end, winners and losers of the week. Ray?
I have no losers. I'm an American. How could I? I am thrilled for my country. I am thrilled Donald Trump is the president, and I look forward to the golden age over the next 4 years. I really do.
Genius?
Man, I respect you and I appreciate you. I feel very differently about that. I would say my loser had to be, honestly, the White House, particularly via their website. I was looking around and watching the executive orders that they are allowing, or just as an iconic American institution, allowing to be revoked by Donald Trump and his administration. I think that's a loss, particularly, let's say, DEI. Well, they're focused on DEI, but when you think about 1965 and equal opportunity employment, I think we're moving backwards and it's horrible. In terms of a winner, I gotta go, or winners, Costco, Goldman Sachs, these companies, including a bunch of nonprofits and for-profits in the state of Maine, who are continuing to focus on diversity and inclusion because they know that that's a way to be good humans that support other Mainers.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for watching another edition of Political Brew.